All right, we're going to do a quick little video on just an introduction to the microscope. Talk a little bit about couple different types of microscopes, care, parts of the microscope, how to focus it, that sort of thing. All right. So, first type, compound light microscope. This is the one that we're going to use most often in the laboratory. It uses compound lenses to magnify objects. The lenses bend the light to make them appear closer. Right? Most of the ones that we use have three common magnifications: a 40 power, a 100 power, and a 400 power. And we get that by multiplying the power of the eyepiece that you look through, which is a 10, by the power of the objectives that we have. And there are three of them. Most of them have three of them, some have four, but most common one would be three, where we have a 4 power, a 10 power, and a 40 power. And if you multiply those by the eyepiece, that's where we get our total magnification on what we're going to be looking at. All right, second type is called a stereoscope. This allows for you to use two eyes, binocular, and it's used for three-dimensional objects, putting a rock under it or whatever, something three-dimensional. And usually these are, generally speaking, magnifying 10 or 30 times. So if you have the eyepiece of 10, you have two objectives, a 1 and a 3. All right. All right. Different parts. Most of these you've probably heard of. The eyepiece, that's what you look through. The body tube, it connects the eyepiece to the objective. The arm is what connects the base, used to carry it along with the base. Put your hand under the base, support it. The illuminator or the light source. The stage is where you set your slide on. The clips will hold the slide to the stage. You've got the nose piece, where the objectives are attached to, that you rotate it into place. Objective lens, it magnifies the image. There are usually three of them, I said. Okay. The diaphragm controls the amount of light coming through. Okay. If you need more light, you open it up. If you need less light, you close it down a little bit. A couple different focusing adjustment knobs. We have the coarse adjustment knob, and then we have the fine adjustment knob, and we'll talk about in more detail when we use what. Power switch obviously turns on the power. The high power objective is used to study a specimen in very fine detail. It is very long and it gets you really, really close to the object you're looking at. The low power objective is the shortest, and you always start at this power. You start at the low power and you work your way up. All right. So let's take a look. Here's a kind of a generic representation of a compound microscope. Right, if we go ahead and label, there's our eyepiece, that's what we look through. There's the arm, that's what we use to carry it, along with putting our hand under the base, remember. Okay. There's our stage, that's what we set the slides on. That's the coarse adjustment. And we use the coarse adjustment when we're in low power or medium power. When we get up to high power, that's when we're going to use the fine adjustment. All right. There's the base. The body tube is what connects the eyepiece to the turret, all right, or the nose piece. You've got some objective lenses. Clips hold your slide to the stage. Diaphragm underneath that controls the amount of light, and there's your illuminator or your light source. Okay. And we'll get practice. We'll get them out, and we'll practice using them and things like that. Okay. All right, magnification. We talked about this a little bit. We're just going to get a little more detail. There's three magnifications: scanning, low, and high. Each magnification is written on the lens, and then the eyepiece also has a magnification. So we take the smallest magnification objective, which is a 4, multiplied by the ocular of a 10. That's how we get a 40x as our lowest magnification, until we work our way up to the high power where we have a 40 on the objective lens and a 10 on the ocular or the eyepiece. It gives us a 400. Using the microscope, some general procedures. When you get out a microscope to use, you want to clear a spot to work from. Right? You don't want all extra junk all over the place, moving stuff, grabbing things. That's how you end up bumping and knocking over equipment and breaking things and stuff like that. All right, so you're going to plug your microscope in unless you have a rechargeable one. Okay. When you store, you're going to wrap the cord around the microscope and make sure that it's on the scanning objective. If you need to move it, you're going to carry it by the base and the arm with both hands. So you're going to grab the arm with one hand and you're going to put your hand under the base with the other. Prior to increasing magnification, you're going to center the object in the field of view. If it's not centered, once you start going up in power, you'll lose it. You won't be able to see it anymore. Okay, so you want to make sure that it's centered right in that field of view. Okay. Focusing. Always start with the scanning objective, which is the lowest power. All right, you will be able to see something. You're going to use the coarse adjustment knob. It may look pretty small, but you gotta always start here and get it centered. All right. Normally we don't use the stage clips for the scanning because we have to move the slide around until we get the object centered in the field of view so we can find it. All right. Once you focused on scanning, you're going to switch to low power and you're going to use the coarse adjustment again. Make sure it's centered or you're going to lose it. All right. Then finally you switch to high power, and at this point you don't use the coarse adjustment knob anymore. You're only going to use the fine adjustment. If you use the coarse adjustment, it moves too far, too fast. You could end up hitting the glass slide with the objective, and then you've ruined the objective lens. You could scratch it, break it. All right. So just a recap: put it on scanning, use the coarse, make sure it's centered, get it focused. Switch to low power. Refocus if you need to, making sure it's perfectly centered, and then finally you can switch up to high power and only use the fine knob to dial in that focus a little bit so you can see it really well. All right, when you're drawing specimens, sometimes we have to sketch things that we see. All right, you always want to use pencil because you can change and manipulate, that kind of thing. Make sure you're labeling all your drawings. All right, with not only what the parts are, but what magnification you're looking at it in. So people know when they look at it, this is at 100 power, this is at 400 power. Okay? You're going to label outside your field of view and make sure you draw them to scale. If your specimen takes up half the field of view, when you draw it, your drawing had better take up half the field of view. All right, you're not just going to draw the shape, you got to draw what you actually see in that field of view, that circle field of view. All right, making a wet mount. We're going to get a little piece, little thin slice of whatever specimen you're working with. All right, it's got to be thin enough so that the cover slip, when it sits on it, doesn't wobble around. All right, you're going to place a drop of water over the specimen. And then you're going to lay the edge of your cover slip on one side at a 45-degree angle, and then gently let it fall on top. The reason we do that is so it will push most of the bubbles in the water off to one side, and they won't be in the middle of your field of view. Okay, remember, set one edge down, and then lower and let the other edge drop down on top. All right, if we need to stain a slide with iodine or some other stain in order to be able to see it properly, you're going to take your slide that you've already created. Okay? You're going to place a little drop of stain on one edge. Then you're going to take the edge of a piece of paper towel on the opposite side and touch it to the opposite side of the cover slip. That will draw the water out from under the cover slip, and it will pull the stain with it. and then the stain will attach itself to whatever the object is that you're looking at. All right. Clean up. Make sure you turn your microscope off. Store always with the scanning objective, the smallest objective in place. Wrapping your cord around, putting a cover on it, that kind of thing. If there's a container, there should be a container. You can place your slides and your cover slips that you've used into the container so that they can be cleaned or processed so they can be used again. And then make sure you put any other equipment that you use back in the appropriate place so that it can be used again by whoever else needs to do it. All right. A little troubleshooting. Okay, sometimes you might have trouble working your microscope. If you run into problems, here are a couple of things that are common. These are some common problems that sometimes happen. The image is too dark, it's hard to see. Adjust your diaphragm and make sure your light is turned on first. Some people forget to turn on the light. Some people have the diaphragm closed right off, so no light can get through. So check to make sure it's turned on and check to make sure your diaphragm is open. All right? And then you can adjust that diaphragm in or out to get the best viewing light. All right? There's a spot in my viewing field. Even when I move the slide, the spot stays in the same place. Chances are you've got a dirty lens. Okay? You're going to have to get a piece of lens paper, which is it's not paper towel. It's special paper that's made to clean the lens without scratching it. It's similar to the stuff you might use that get from your eye doctor to clean your glasses. It won't scratch the lens. Okay? I can't see anything under high power. Go back and remember your steps. Okay? So focus under scanning and then low. If that's not done properly, you're not going to get anything on high. All right, go back to scanning again, recenter, refocus with coarse, go up to low, make sure it's centered, refocus with coarse, then jump up to high again, try it again. All right. Only half of my viewing field is lit up. It looks like there's a half moon in there. Chances are you probably don't have your objective fully clicked into place. And so you need to make sure that there's a little notch in each one as you spin that nose piece. Make sure that objective fully clicks into place, centered right over your field of view. Those are some common problems that happen quite often. If none of those work for you, and you still can't get it, then you got to contact me, and I'll come over and see if I can give you a hand. All right. And that is just a little background, quick little background on how to use the microscope. So once we get going and get into them, we have a little basic background of how to deal with it.